Philadelphia, but you're right, the ballots are still being counted behind me at the Philadelphia Convention Center. And it's those mail-in ballots that the Trump campaign and the legal team are sort of keeping their eyes on very closely. Let's give you an update on where we stand as of right now. 60,000 remaining ballots in Pennsylvania to be counted, 14,000 in the city of Philadelphia. And don't forget those military overseas ballots that aren't even due until Tuesday, plus another 12,000 mail-in ballots that require review by the Board of Elections before they can be counted. But the Trump campaign and his legal team are alleging widespread fraud, although they haven't really presented any solid evidence of that yet. Here's a look at all of the legal battles they are waging here in Pennsylvania. Chief among them, the extended mail-in ballot deadline. Now, SCOTUS has ordered all those ballots that arrived after 8 o'clock on Election Day to be segregated, put to the side, and secured. The other big one is the Poll Observer Access. We've heard a lot about this. Republicans saying their ballot observers inside the convention hall were not allowed close enough to be able to see the names and the postmarks on those ballots so they could verify them themselves. They're upset about that. Heather Cronin, though, she is one of those vote counters inside the convention hall. She told my colleague Eric Shawn today there are a lot of security measures in place inside that building. She doesn't believe it was possible at all for cheating to occur in that room. Listen.
Not that I saw. Absolutely not. No. And I want to stress, every single person that I met in that room was there because they wanted to serve democracy. Every single person wanted those votes counted. There was no partisan discussions. It was about counting the votes.
Now, none of the legal battles mattered at all to the thousands of people gathered across downtown Philadelphia today. They were dancing in the streets, drinking, throwing confetti, shouting, "We did it," and "You're fired." And those celebrating Shannon really felt like it was them. They were proud of themselves. They really do feel like it was Philadelphia that handed this victory over to now President-elect Biden. Shannon.
All right, Aisha, thank you very much. Live in Philly for us tonight. So President Trump says this election is far from over. His campaign filing lawsuits in battleground states, including Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, now Arizona, over allegations of fraud in ballot counting and voting and other irregularities. Georgia's Secretary of State announcing Friday there will be a recount because of the razor-thin margin. Follows a win for the Trump team in Pennsylvania Thursday when an appellate court let election watchers stand up to 6 feet away from vote counters in Philly, but their request to stop the vote was denied by a federal judge. So what happens now? Joining me now, founder and executive director of the National Security Institute, Jamil Jaffer. Good to see you again tonight, Jamil.
Good to see you, Shannon.
Okay, so we continue to hear that the president, his critics say, is making all kinds of allegations he can't back up. But I'm beginning to see sworn affidavits people are doing under oath, alleging things that they have seen. Those will all have to play out. But we still have this issue sitting before the U.S. Supreme Court about these ballots that were supposed to be segregated in Pennsylvania, the order there from Justice Alito. He said the fuller court is going to take a look at this. Do you think they'll get directly involved?
Well, you know, it's hard to know. I mean, we've seen, obviously, the Supreme Court get involved once before in the 2000 elections at this sort of point in the ballgame in Bush v. Gore. Remember, though, that was a very thin margin there. You know, a Florida recount with 1,800 votes separating Al Gore and George Bush, and a Florida Supreme Court that I think the U.S. Supreme Court believed had acted completely unlawfully. And so this is a different scenario. This goes to the functioning of state law. And we've seen the justices, in particular the conservative justices, be fairly skeptical of messing with state law when it comes to these questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, we have seen some language from a number of the conservative justices in recent days because they've had so many of these cases come up through North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Most of them they haven't gotten to on the merits. They've been asked for emergency injunctions, those kinds of things. But we have seen the language there where they say, listen, the Constitution leaves these voting measures to state legislatures. But in a number of these challenges, what we have in Pennsylvania, the state Supreme Court changed the state law there, so that's not the state legislature acting. We have allegations of the same thing happening in Alabama, North Carolina, and other places. So there are justices acknowledging that there could be some issues here that are in violation of the Constitution itself.
That's exactly right. And they point to the text of the Constitution, which refers to state legislatures. So you're exactly right to highlight that. And remember, again, if they do think there's a constitutional violation, the justices won't hesitate to get involved, as they did in Bush v. Gore.
Okay, so Bush v. Gore played out. There were several federal and state court things going on in Florida right now for the Trump campaign. They've got a number of states. I'm told they're going to file an additional, a couple of things in Pennsylvania and Georgia, either Monday or Tuesday of next week. People may forget it was painful for everybody who lived through it and was covering it or fighting these legal battles back then. But Bush v. Gore went on for 37 days before Al Gore eventually conceded. Do you see a scenario in which we're on that same kind of track this time around with all these different court cases pending?
Well, there is a lot obviously going on. There's a number of cases. The problem with some of these cases, for example, the access to have observers watch the votes. I mean, at this point, that's sort of over and done with, right? The counting is largely done with the exception of these military overseas ballots and the like. And so I think those are going to largely fall away. And we'll probably come down to one or two major cases, probably in places like Pennsylvania, where there really is a sort of live dispute and there's enough electoral votes to matter. At this point, the president is 56 electoral votes short at a minimum. And so it's going to be hard to make those up. And so, it may be that we may know sooner rather than later just because it will be hard to catch up given how these things are playing out. There are these mandatory recounts taking place in a couple of states. That may also play a role too, Wisconsin, Georgia, and the like.